Hi, Joan here again, sharing another book with you. And I don't know technically if you'd call this a book, but this is a group that I belong to on Facebook called Art It Out. And there's a wonderful moderator. Her name is Crystal Kitzman, and she does videos all the time. And we had a really fun project for March. It was called Make Your Mark March, and every day she gave us a prompt, and we were to use those prompts to create art. So I wanted to show you what I did. I'll start by telling you about the book that I made here, to keep all my samples here. All the artwork I did on a Bristol paper, and I gessoed most of it. Now the cover here, I put bookbinding tape on it, and I used cardstock to cover. This was the back of a legal size tablet that had the cardboard, and that's what I used for the cover here, and had this really neat paper. Now I'm going to share with you the different prompts we had every day. The first one was MMM, Make Your Mark March. I didn't listen to her first video, and I thought it was just M, so I did an M. So this is acrylic paint over gesso, and then I used Sharpie marker to do the doodling. The next prompt was lines, and I used torn paper. I actually used a marker to create some lines. I used cardstock, and that's how I made my lines, and then I added images to it. You know, everybody has a different interpretation, and that was mine. The next one was markers. Started with acrylic paint on the back, used markers to do the swirls, and then took a ruler to do the line work, filled in a little bit here, and then it was a little bit boring to me, so then I took some fun printed paper and used mounting tape to give it a little bit of dimension. The next one I'm pretty well known for. I will take silhouettes off of the internet and then do collage on the silhouette. And the prompt on this one was black and white. The next one was to use bubble wrap. So I put paint on the bubble wrap. That's the design here. And then I took two different stencils just to add a little bit more texture to it. That was a fun one to do. That was the stencil actually I cut myself. Guess what the next one was? Pink. And what I did on this is I took a cardstock, and I have a stencil for alphabet, so I just did it in reverse and traced it and cut them out. And again, I used mounting tape on this for a little bit of dimension. And I have another project I'm doing, and I'm using this really neat yarn, so I added the yarn to it. Thought that was fun. Next one is circles, and on this one did all the design on it, and then did a whitewash with real light white paint, and these areas were masked off with masking tape. And this was actually a video that I had learned this technique from Crystal again, and that's Art It Out. The next prompt was smush, and this one was just to take paint and smush it on. And I think this one I used a little bit of bubble wrap, and then I just used plastic wrap on this. And then just added a couple feathers here for some more interest. The next prompt was to use rubber bands. And I had some really big rubber bands, so I put big rubber bands on this. And then, I don't know if you can tell in the background, but I had made a stamp that had rubber bands affixed to it. But I thought it needed more definition, so that's why I added the rubber bands. This next one was we were to take 10 different marks we made, and I used my fingerprints, stencils, washi tape, markers, modeling paste, mica gloss, which was an ink, collage, rubber stamp, glitter, and text. And I don't know if you can tell from this the glitter, but yeah, there we go, a little bit glitter. And this was a lot of fun to do. I learned again from Crystal for modeling paste to add color to it. So I just added a little bit of pink in that. And there's my little bit of rubber stamping there. The next prompt was X. And I wanted to do something very subtle. On this one I painted the background, did a little bit of stenciling, did a little bit of rubber stamping, and then it was kind of boring, so I added a little bit of collage. So those are my X's. The next one was stencil. And I tried to use stencil a lot of different ways here. And again, here's my signature collage silhouettes. The next one was either splash or drips. So I decided to do drips, and I used ink on this. And this is the mica ink. I don't know, again, if you can tell on this, but it's a gold ink. Really fun to use. Next one was 3 colors. And I've started to do some fluid painting. So I took the yellow and the blue, combined those, of course, and got green. So there's my 3 colors. This next one was a lot of fun. I've never been crazy about my handwriting, and this one was to do scribble writing. And so this one I was very loose on it, used a micron pen on paper that I had stained. Actually went 2 directions on it. And it's the first time I've actually done one with my own handwriting, which I really enjoyed. The next prompt was triangles. And I always try to think outside of the box. So I put the papers down to get a triangular shape rather than actually do triangles. Next one was green. And this is not all green, but this one was, again, the fluid painting. This one right here was watercolor. This probably took me longer to do than any of them. And I did some ink work on it too. Next one was pencil. Again, an image I took off of the internet and did color pencil on it. And then I did a little bit of cross hatching around here, and again used a Sharpie marker to create the frame on this. The next prompt was to use a toothbrush. And on this one I did an overall design and I didn't like it. I put the paints down and then used the toothbrush to run it through to get texture. I actually used a fan brush too. And then I put modeling paste, which I had colored, and instead of using a palette knife on a stencil, I actually used the toothbrush again, but I didn't get a lot of texture. But anyhow, that was toothbrush. Next one was credit card. And you can use credit card to apply paint a lot of different ways. You can brush it across to get paint all over your surface. And this one I just dipped the credit card in a fluorescent craft paint and then pulled it across. And of course rubber stamping and a little bit of collage. Next one was swirls. And I had done an earlier project where I did this wave kind of effect. And so when they said the prompt was swirls, I thought I got to do this again. So and a little rubber stamp on that. Next one is 3 items of trash. This was actually a heart which I had thrown away. I decided to use it. This was a business card from somebody who's changed addresses, so it's no longer a viable business card for them. And this was a letter that I got from a gal I swap with in Australia. So that's my take on trash. Next one was dots. Who doesn't love dots? And on this I decided to use different washi tape, and then also I have a lot of dot papers, decorative papers. So I cut those out with a die and did my dots. The next one is squares. Next one was texture, and I took black paper and I used a toothbrush, palette knife, a ceramic tool I have, and an X-Acto knife to do this. So I used really cheap craft paint again, ended up splattering it on the end. I don't know if you can tell, but I got so much texture on this. I really enjoy doing these prompts because it forces me to use materials I don't usually use, and just expands my art making. And this next one is rubber stamps. So I took some of my favorite rubber stamps. First I put acrylic paint behind it, and then used a micron pen to get the texture in the back. Just a few more to go. This one actually, I was watching something that Crystal had done, and this prompt was to use a straw. And I was familiar with blowing onto paper that had ink on it or paint on it, but she introduced me to some other techniques to actually dip the straw in ink and just dabble it on. And also somebody in the group took the side of the straw and just rolled it. So I learned some new ways, and of course using the straw also as a stamp. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe if I get a little closer, you can see how it was used as a stamp. The background, I watched something that Crystal had done where she sprayed water on paper, and she actually had gessoed it, I think. This was just raw paper, sprayed water on it, dropped ink on it, and then sprayed water on it again. And I just love that effect. So that's what that is. Next one is plastic wrap. And on this one, I had purchased some ink for re-inking stamp pads, and I've never been real successful at that, and I couldn't resist it. This company was going out of business. They were like 25 cents each. So the blues, these colors on the background, I applied. It took a long time for it to dry, and then I just decided I would use that as a background on this. So then you take plastic wrap and put paint on that, and then just dab it down. Next one is metallic paints, and I don't know if you can tell. I got to get close on this. I used both copper. Can you tell that way? I used both copper and gold paints on this, and again another image off of the internet. And this was a stencil that went badly. It's supposed to be a tree, so I obscured it a little bit with some paint. And then the very last prompt was to select and do whatever we wanted to do. And I have a art group where you can share your art. It's called Look What I Just Did, with an exclamation point. There's actually another group on Facebook, and make sure you don't get that one. It's Look What I Just Did. And my group is all about you just sharing your artwork. And we have all kinds of different artists on there. I didn't want to make it, just watercolorists or sketchers or whatever. So you're welcome to join my group. And what I did on this is I invited the members to tell me what my last project was going to be. So one gal had suggested suns. She actually suggested all these: suns, words, plaid, wax resist. What was the last one? Oh, and to use a brayer. And I wanted to use a brayer. So I just took her lead. Found it a little bit boring, so added the image. And that's always a good way to finish off something if it's just not quite doing it for you. Add an image. So anyhow, that's my little book. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you'll be inspired to try some of these techniques. It was really a lot of fun.